After I worked 3 jobs to keep us fed, my husband's mother drained my son's surgery fund, bought herself gold bracelets, and said, "A sick kid is cheaper than a divorce." My husband told me to shut up before the neighbors heard. I let him finish talking, because the delivery man at the door was carrying more than a package. She held her wrist up like she was showing off a trophy. 3 gold bracelets, stacked. Thick ones. The kind you see in the glass case at the jewelry counter where they keep the price tags face down. "You like them?" Rowena said. Not asking me. Asking the room. Asking my husband Cray, who was standing by the kitchen door with his arms crossed and his eyes anywhere but my face. I treated myself. Lord knows nobody else around here is going to. I had just come home from my 3rd shift. Not my 2nd. My 3rd. I was doing mornings at the diner on Clover Street, afternoons at the call center on Route 9, and 3 nights a week I stocked shelves at the bulk grocery on Fletcher Road. I smelled like fryer grease and industrial cleaner, and I had been awake since 4:47 in the morning. My feet were doing that thing where they stop hurting and just go numb because they've given up. And my son Eli's surgery fund, the account I had been putting into for 11 months, the account I kept a handwritten ledger for in the nightstand drawer, had $214 left in it. It was supposed to have $9,400. The surgery was for his hip. Leg capitis. The pediatric orthopedic surgeon at Bryan County Medical had been clear. Without the corrective procedure before Eli turned 9, the joint would degrade and he'd walk with a limp for the rest of his life. Insurance covered 60%. We needed the rest. Eli was 8.5. I had been the only one building that account. Cray knew that. Rowena knew that. The account was in Cray's name because I didn't have my own bank account when we opened it, another thing Rowena had quietly engineered 3 years before, telling Cray that joint finances were the healthy way and that women who kept separate accounts were already planning to leave. I stared at the bracelets on her wrist. Where did that money come from, Rowena? Not a question. My voice was flat because if I let it move it was going to break. She put her wrist down and picked up her tea. Cray handles the money. Ask him. I turned to Cray. He uncrossed his arms. Crossed them again. Mom needed something. We'll rebuild it. Eli's surgery is in 6 weeks. We'll figure it out. There's $9,000 missing, Cray. $9,000 I worked for. That I put in. That was specifically for, I know what it was for. He said it like I was slow. Like I was explaining something everyone already understood and was tired of hearing about. He had this way of making you feel like the problem was that you kept bringing up the problem. Rowena set her mug down and looked at me with this expression she'd been perfecting for 4 years. Tired. Slightly amused. Like I was a child throwing a fit over something adults had already sorted out. "A sick kid is cheaper than a divorce," she said. "I want you to think about that before you start screaming." I didn't scream. I went very still. She meant it practically. She meant that if Cray and I split, the legal costs, the division, the loss of my income, it would cost more than one surgery. She had done math in her head. About her grandson's hip. About my 3 jobs. And she had decided the numbers worked in her favor. She bought bracelets with the number. I looked at her wrist again. 3 of them. Gold. Heavy enough to clink when she moved. Cray pointed at me. "Lower your voice." I haven't raised it. "You're going to. I know that look. And I'm telling you right now, before the neighbors hear something they don't need to hear." I let him talk. I let him finish the sentence. I kept my eyes on the front door because I had seen headlights in the driveway and I had recognized the van. White, with the green and yellow logo on the side. Speedy Process Service. Out of Harwick County. The knock came before Cray finished his sentence. He stopped talking. Looked at the door. Looked at me. And for just 1 second something moved behind his eyes that wasn't irritation. It was a different thing entirely. I walked to the door and opened it. The man outside had a clipboard and a yellow envelope and he said my name. My full legal name. And I said yes, that's me, and he handed me the envelope. And I signed the line he pointed to, and he said have a good night and walked back to his van. I turned around. Cray was 3 feet closer than he'd been. Rowena had stood up. I held the envelope. "What is that?" Cray said. I didn't answer. I set it on the kitchen table and went to bed. I had been waiting 8 days for that delivery. I knew exactly what was in it. I want to back up. Because the bracelets were the moment everything broke open. But the story doesn't start there. The story starts about 6 weeks before that, when my sister Pam called me on a Tuesday evening while I was in the parking lot of the bulk grocery, sitting in my car eating a gas station sandwich before my shelf-stocking shift started. Pam is 4 years older than me and she spent 7 years working in financial fraud investigation before she moved to do private consulting. She is the person I called when I finally looked at the bank statements. I had gotten access to Cray's banking app 3 months earlier by watching him unlock his phone. He never changed the passcode. He should have. I wasn't snooping at first, I needed to see if the mortgage had cleared. But then I looked at the savings account. The one with Eli's surgery money in it. There had been 6 withdrawals over 4 months. ATM withdrawals and 2 wire transfers. The wire transfers went to an account I didn't recognize. I took screenshots. 14 of them. I texted them to Pam. She called me back in 40 minutes. "The wire account," she said, "is registered to Rowena." I ate the rest of my sandwich in silence. "How much total?" I said. $9,182. I sat with that. "Okay," I said. "There's more," Pam said. "That account she received the transfers into, it's also the account that's been receiving a $400 monthly transfer from Cray's checking for the past 2 years." I had not known about the $400. Nobody had told me about the $400. I had been working 3 jobs and handing my checks to a household that had been quietly bleeding money to his mother for 26 months. Pam had a friend at Harwick County Family Court. Not a lawyer. A clerk. Someone who could point her toward the right forms and the right language and make sure everything was filed correctly. I am not going to use the word orchestrated because that sounds like a movie. It was just Pam, sitting at her kitchen table with a laptop and a glass of wine, doing paperwork for 3 evenings in a row, because she is the kind of sister who does that. We filed for emergency legal separation on March 8. The process server was scheduled for March 14. Between those 2 dates I had to keep going. 3 jobs. Dinner on the table. Eli's physical therapy appointments on Wednesdays. I had to act like everything was the same because Cray had no idea and Rowena had no idea, and if they got wind of it they would have moved money, changed accounts, done something to make things harder. Rowena came over on March 11 and sat at my kitchen table and told me I needed to soften up a little because Cray had been stressed. She had a new bracelet on. Just one that day. Thinner than the others. I smiled and poured her coffee. And I thought about the account number and the screenshot on my phone. On March 13, the night before, Cray came home and said his mother was coming for dinner the next day. I said that was fine. I made pot roast. I set the table. I listened to Rowena talk about her neighbor's bad landscaping and how Cray had always been the sensitive one in the family and how I was lucky to have a husband who still came home. That last part she said looking directly at me. I passed her the bread. And then March 14 happened. The fryer grease. The numb feet. The 3 bracelets on her wrist. The $9,000 math problem she had done in her head about her grandson's hip. The sentence Cray didn't get to finish. The knock. Now. I got up at 6 a.m. on March 15. I got Eli dressed and fed and walked him to the end of the driveway where the school bus picked him up at 7:10. I watched the bus until it turned the corner. Then I went inside and called Pam. "Tonight," I said. "Can you be here by 5? "I'll be there at 4:30, she said. Cray had not opened the yellow envelope. It was still on the kitchen table. He had slept on the couch and in the morning he hadn't said anything. Just watched me from the hallway while I made Eli's breakfast. He had that look again. The one from the night before. Not anger. Something quieter and more scared than anger. Rowena called at 10 a.m. "I think we need to talk," she said. "I agree," I said. "Today. At the house. I'll bring Cray." "That works," I said. "Come at 5:30. There was a pause. She had expected resistance. She had expected me to hedge or apologize or ask her what she wanted to talk about so I could prepare to be small. Fine, she said. And hung up. I spent the rest of the day getting my documents in order. I had a folder. Craft-colored, legal size. Inside it, the 14 screenshots printed on paper. The bank statements for the savings account, showing every withdrawal. The wire transfer records Pam had obtained. The 2-year history of the $400 monthly transfers. A printout of the jewelry store transaction. Rowena had used the same bank account to buy the bracelets on March 10th, 4 days before I got home and saw them on her wrist. The total on that receipt was $1,847. I also had a letter from Dr. Okonkwo at Bryan County Medical, dated February 28, outlining Eli's surgical timeline and what delayed treatment would mean for his hip development. I had asked Dr. Okonkwo for that letter 3 weeks earlier, telling him I needed it for insurance purposes. He had written it in plain language. He was thorough. Pam arrived at 4:28. She sat at the kitchen table and drank water and looked at my folder. "You don't need me to say anything," she said. "I know. Just wanted to confirm." "I know," I said again. Craig came home at 5:15. He saw Pam at the table and stopped in the doorway. "Why is she here?" "She's my sister." "This isn't, I don't need her here for this conversation." "She's already here," I said. "Sit down." He didn't sit. He stood by the counter and took out his phone, and I could tell he was texting Rowena because his thumbs were going fast and he kept glancing at the door. Rowena came at 5:34. She walked in like she owned the floor, which she had always done. Coat still on. Bag on her arm. She saw Pam and her mouth went tight. "What is she doing here?" "She's my sister," I said again. Rowena looked at Cray. Cray looked at the counter. "Okay," Rowena said. "Fine. I came to talk about last night. I think things got heated and there were some things said that." "Sit down, Rowena." She blinked. People didn't tell Rowena to sit down. She sat. I put the folder on the table and opened it. I pulled out the bank statements first. I slid them across to Cray. 6 withdrawals, I said. Between November and February. Total of $9,182. From the account you told me was Eli's surgery fund. Cray looked at the paper. He didn't pick it up. "I know about the withdrawals," he said. "Mom needed, I know what she needed," I said. "I want her to explain it." I looked at Rowena. She lifted her chin. "I had expenses. Medical costs. My knee, your knee." I pulled out the jewelry store receipt. Slid it to her side of the table. March 10th. $1,647 at Garnet and Gold on Prescott Avenue. Plus $200 for what looks like a bracelet cleaning and resizing fee. That was 4 days before you sat in my house and showed me your new jewelry. She looked at the receipt. She didn't touch it. "That's separate," she said. "From what?" "From the medical expenses." "I used a different, it's the same account number," I said. 3rd line from the bottom. Her eyes went to the receipt. She was reading. I watched her read it. "Cray," she said. "Not to me. To him." Like he was going to do something. He was looking at the receipt too. He hadn't seen it before. I could tell because of the way his face was moving. He had known about the withdrawals. He had not known about the jewelry store. "Mom," he said. "Quiet. Careful. It was a small thing. I've been under enormous stress and Rowena," I said. "Last night you told me that a sick kid is cheaper than a divorce." The room went quiet. Pam was very still. Rowena's chin was still up but something behind her eyes shifted. She had said it casually the night before, the way you say something you believe so deeply you've stopped noticing it's monstrous. Now it was in the room differently. Now Cray was hearing it repeated slowly. "I didn't mean it like that," she said. "How did you mean it?" "I meant that the costs of breaking up a family, you did math," I said. "About your grandson's hip. You decided that the cost of keeping me in this marriage was less than the cost of surgery. And then you spent his surgery money on bracelets. That is not what happened." "What happened?" "The money was in Cray's account." "Cray authorized, show me," I said. She stopped. Show me Cray's authorization. Text, email, voicemail, anything. She looked at Cray. He looked at the table. He did not look at her. He did not say anything. Because there wasn't anything. She had moved the money without asking him. She had told him afterward. I knew this because Pam had found the transaction timestamps, and the first time Cray logged into the account after a withdrawal was always 2 or 3 days after the withdrawal cleared. He'd found out after. Every time. Rowena's hands were in her lap. I could see them. She had put the bag on the floor when she sat down, and now she was gripping the hem of her coat. I'm his mother, she said. He's my son, I said. Her face did something. Not color, she went paler, not redder. Like something was draining. You can't, she started. Stopped. This is family. You don't bring paperwork to family. You brought bracelets to family, I said. Pam made a sound. Not a laugh. Quieter than that. Involuntary. Cray put his hand over his eyes. I pulled out the letter from Dr. Okonkwo. I put it in the center of the table. This is from Eli's surgeon. If the procedure doesn't happen before August, the window closes and we're looking at a lifetime of pain management and probable early onset arthritis in a joint that should have been corrected when he was 8 years old. Eli is 8 years old right now. Rowena looked at the letter. Her mouth opened. I didn't know it was that serious, she said. You knew he needed surgery. You knew what the account was for. You've been in this house every week for 4 years. Cray never told me the details. I told you, I said. In October. You were sitting in that chair. I showed you the estimate from Dr. Okonkwo's office. You said, and I'm quoting you directly, that doctors always overstate things to run up bills. Her hands were shaking. Not a lot. But I could see it. The coat hem was moving in her grip. Cray lowered his hand from his face. He was looking at his mother with something that was not quite anger and not quite grief. It was the look of a man realizing a thing he had been choosing not to realize for a long time. Mom, he said. Did you know about the surgery window? I told you I didn't, she told you in October, Pam said. First time she'd spoken. Level voice. Not unkind. Just a fact dropped on the table like another document. Rowena turned to Pam. I don't know who you think you are, I'm her sister, Pam said. I'm also the person who pulled the wire transfer records and the account history. If you'd like to discuss those, I'm happy to. Rowena's mouth closed. The 3 bracelets were on her wrist. I had been looking at them since she sat down. She had not taken her coat off. The bracelets caught the kitchen light every time her hands moved. I need those back, I said. She looked at me. The bracelets. They were bought with money that was designated for Eli's surgery. I need them back or I need the cash equivalent. You can't be serious. $1,847, I said. That's what the receipt says. I am not giving you my jewelry. Then I'll note your refusal in the filing. Cray's head came up. What filing? I had been waiting for this. Not with pleasure. With something more tired than pleasure. I reached into the folder and took out the last document. The copy of the separation filing. Emergency grounds. Financial harm to a minor. I put it in front of Cray. He stared at it. He read the first paragraph. His mouth was slightly open. You already, he picked it up. Set it back down. When did you, March 8th? That's a week ago. Yes. You were here. Every day. You made dinner. You didn't say anything. You told me to shut up before the neighbors heard, I said. So I didn't say anything. That landed. I watched it land in him. He sat back in his chair like something had left his body. Rowena pushed back from the table. This is insane. This is an attack. She's been planning this, Cray. She came in here with her folder and her sister and she's been, Rowena. Cray said her name and she stopped. One word. Flat. He had never used that voice with her before, not in front of me. It was the voice of a man who had just read a document and could not pretend anymore. Stop. She stopped. He didn't look at her. He looked at me. How much is still in the account? $214. He closed his eyes. I'll fix it. The filing is already in, I said. I'll fix the money. The surgery. I'll get a personal loan. The filing is already in, I said again. Rowena stood up. I want to go. Nobody moved to help her. Nobody walked her out. She picked up her bag. Walked to the door. And then she stopped, hand on the door frame, and she turned back and she looked at me. And I could tell she was looking for something to say. Something to leave with. Some version of herself that wasn't standing in my kitchen having just been walked through what she'd done to a child line by line in front of her son. She had nothing. She left. The door didn't slam. It just clicked shut behind her. Within 2 weeks of that night, Craig's Aunt Bev, his mother's sister, the one Rowena had lunch with every Sunday, the one she had been close with for 40 years, called Craig directly and asked him to confirm what she had heard. Bev had 3 grandchildren. She had paid for 2 of their medical procedures out of pocket. She was not a person who had a frame of reference for what Rowena had done, and she needed Craig to tell her it wasn't true. Craig confirmed it. I know this because Bev texted me directly afterward. She said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know her to be this person. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Rowena called me on March 22nd. 8 days after the process server. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was 4 minutes and 12 seconds long. I listened to it once. The beginning was about how I had humiliated her in front of her son. The middle was about how she had always tried to support this family. The end was about Eli, how she loved him, how she would never do anything to hurt him, how I knew that. I deleted it. She called Pam 2 days later. Pam listened for about 30 seconds and then said, she's not going to talk to you, and hung up. Rowena tried one more time. She came to the house on March 28, rang the bell. Eli was home. He came to the window and I told him to stay inside, that Grandma couldn't come in right now, that we'd explain later. I went to the door. I opened it 3 inches. She had been crying recently. Her eyes were that particular kind of red that doesn't go away fast. She was not wearing the bracelets. I just want to explain, she said. Okay, I said. I made a mistake. I know I made a mistake. But I am still Eli's grandmother and I am still, Rowena, I said. You sat in my kitchen with those bracelets on your wrist and you told me that a sick kid is cheaper than a divorce. I want you to think about that before you ask me for something. She opened her mouth. I closed the door. Bev had apparently told 2 other people in the family. By April those 2 people had told others. By the time Rowena showed up to her church's spring fundraiser in the 3rd week of April, there were women there who had known her for 20 years and who had heard the story from at least one source. I know this because one of them, a woman named Coral who I had met twice at family events, sent me a Facebook message on April 24th. It said, I heard what happened. I told Rowena today that what she did was not forgivable and that I would not pretend otherwise to be polite. I thought you should know. I read that message twice and then I set my phone down on the kitchen table. The surgery fund was rebuilt. Craig took a personal loan on March 17. Dr. Okonkwo's office got the full amount by March 31st. Eli's procedure was scheduled and completed in early June. He came home in a soft brace and complained about not being able to run for 4 weeks and ate 3 bowls of cereal in one sitting because the anesthesia made him hungry. He walks fine. The bracelets never came back. I stopped expecting them to. Last week I was cleaning out the nightstand drawer and I found the handwritten ledger. The one I had kept for 11 months. Every deposit in my handwriting, every date, every amount. $200 from the diner. $315 from the call center. $180 from the grocery. Month after month. I stood there and looked at it for a minute. Then I put it in the recycling bin. Some things you stop needing to hold. But Rowena's Sunday lunches with Bev stopped in March and they haven't started again. That one I know for certain. She lost me. She expected that. She lost Craig's trust in a way he can't fully name and she knows it and he knows it and that silence between them is the thing she didn't price into her math. A sick kid is cheaper than a divorce. Do the math again, Rowena.